Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. A Friday night earthquake in St. Lucia is once again stirring up concerns about the activity at Kwali Bu, otherwise known as the St. Lucia volcano. On Monday, the National Emergency Management Organization again reassured that the volcano is still very much dormant and that in the event of any activity, St. Lucians will be informed well ahead of time. Rochelle Gonzalez has more in this report.
Night owls were shaken to the core on Friday night after a tremor literally rocked the nation minutes to midnight. Social media immediately lit up with inquiring minds asking whether the jolt was felt island-wide and whether their friends and family were safe. Another concern that arose was whether the tremor was a sign of seismic activity coming from the St. Lucian volcano Kwali Bu. This concern stemmed from the ongoing volcano catastrophe in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where La Soufriere has been erupting violently since Thursday, April 8th. On Monday morning, Hot 7 News sought answers surrounding the quake and the status of the volcano from the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO. The organization's acting director, Maria Medard, gave the details of what occurred on Friday night.
The earth tremor occurred on April 23rd, which was last Friday, at about 11:28 p.m. at night. Some people reported it as felt. We have a few reports from persons, and the UWI Seismic Research Center in Trinidad also have some reports. It occurred at 14.2 degrees north and 61.01 degrees west. So it would have been at a depth of 16 kilometers, and the magnitudes were 3.5.
The acting director sent a clear message of assurance to locals to quell any lingering fears that they may have of the St. Lucian volcano being next on the list to erupt. She said St. Lucians will not be left in the dark if Kwali Bu awakens.
The volcano in St. Lucia is inactive. As anything, with Mother Nature, you cannot ever tell. But there would be signs that there is some sort of acting up of the volcano. We would have enough time to get notice that there is some sense of activity in the volcano before there is even so much as an eruption like St. Vincent. In St. Lucia, we have 3 monitoring stations at the volcano itself in Soufriere. So these would feed information back to the UWI Seismic Research Center. So if there's any activity whatsoever happening there, that information would feed back to Trinidad and we would be alerted. So we do have enough time. And at the same time, I want to say that in spite of the earthquake or the earthquakes that may be happening, we would like to tell people not to panic. Listen to your official sources. As always, disasters occur at any time of the year, and always make sure that you are prepared for any event.
Medard stated that NEMO has ascertained from the UWI Seismic Research Center in Trinidad that at present there is no relation between Friday night's quake and the volcanic activity taking place in Martinique and St. Vincent. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Rochelle Gonzalez.
After 2 months and 7 days away from his constituency due to injury, SLP candidate for Micoud North, Jeremiah Norbert, has returned. Norbert was involved in a motorcycle accident back in February, which eventually led to the loss of his leg. Attempts to save the leg in Martinique proved futile. SLP supporters were in the constituency to welcome home the SLP candidate. Nisha Charles reports.
The road to recovery for SLP candidate Jeremiah Norbert is far from over, but despite the ordeal suffered following an accident in February, Norbert has chosen to focus on the fight ahead. That fight is the one against his opponent in Micoud North, Dr. Gail Rigobert, in the upcoming general election. Norbert returned to his constituency this past weekend after months in Martinique, following his injury which led to him losing his right leg. Norbert said that the outpouring of love from constituents was heartwarming and speaks volumes.
This is just indicative of people wanting change. This is indicative of, we've had enough in this constituency, and people are asking for a change. And as I said to you earlier, the change is coming. The most difficult part was thinking of how hard my constituency was taking, especially in my campaigns. I knew that they were working very hard, day and night, very dedicated persons, and what has worked for them is they've understood that Miku se sanu, you understand? And they've taken the responsibility, even in my absence, to do what is necessary to make sure that this thing did not stop in my absence. And I appreciate that. I want to say kudos to my campaign team. And you know, it's just joyful to be back in my constituency.
Party supporters were emotional as they expressed their loyalty to Jeremiah. They contended that their decision to support Norbert is the best for their constituency.
One set of people only, and we want somebody to represent all of us.
Jeremiah can wash you. He's a boss. He's there for good. He's not color for better we go in. Vote here out.
Despite losing his leg, the former police officer remains upbeat about his chances in the upcoming general elections. For the Hot 7 News, Nisha Charles reporting.
The president of Balance Inc. is calling for some clarity from the powers that be over their plans for upcoming music events this coming carnival season. Lennon Blaze Prosper says he has only heard whispers in the wind about talks being held to host virtual calypso shows, yet efforts to get official word on said events are proving futile. Prosper says musicians are eagerly awaiting the news on these ventures and are hoping to be included in the plans. However, he says patience can only last so long. Rochelle Gonzalez has more.
There is no dispute that the arts and entertainment sector in St. Lucia was dealt one of the harshest blows by the COVID-19 pandemic, and as the island slowly grapples to bring the worst hit sectors back up and running, a call for transparency has been sent out to keep those most affected in the loop. Although the pandemic has put a stop to most social activities and mass crowd events, the respective ministries have come up with new ways of observing a number of annual celebrations, including the first of its kind virtual calypso show in 2020. Lennon Blaze Prosper, who is the president of Balance Inc., told Hot 7 News on Monday that artists are hoping for a repetition of such events this year and that they are poised to take part. However, they are presently at the mercy of whispers from the grapevine to find out where they fit into alleged plans for the local music sector in the near future.
Right now, Balance Inc. in the process of doing the same, well, basically similar to what we did last year. We actually formulating plans to do our calypso vibe, you know. We are hearing many things being said on the media about a virtual carnival. We have not been, nobody has been in touch with us. We have not heard from any of the authorities. So we basically just on our own doing our Balance Inc. work for our members.
Prosper said attempts have been made to get official answers. However, the attempts were all in vain.
We have reached out to the powers that be. We have reached out, and we've only heard that we will get back to you. Yes, we'll get back to you, and that's all we've heard from since I think we sent that letter in since March, and of course, you know, it's the end of April going into May, and I know last year around that time we had already known whether we were having carnival or not. You know, around that time last year we had already known we were not having carnival. So we still wondering what's going on. I mean, we're patient. We're not here to fight anybody, but we're patient. We're waiting to hear what's going on because we believe that, you know, if anything is happening, we should understand that the agencies are here. Like the minister said before, they want the agencies to be formed, and the agencies are being formed. The agencies are here, so we are hoping that they are going to work with the agencies.
In 2020, to the dismay of carnival lovers in St. Lucia and abroad, the decision was taken to cancel the annual event in order to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Rochelle Gonzalez.
Social and political commentator Richard Pitakin is calling on the Ministry of Health to take note of developments in neighboring countries with regard to fully vaccinated individuals and quarantine. Grenada announced recently that come the 1st of May, individuals providing full proof of full vaccination will only be required to quarantine for up to 48 hours pending a negative result from a PCR test administered on entry. Pitakin says that if he were the Ministry of Health in St. Lucia, he would follow suit.
A growing list of countries is reducing or eliminating quarantine for those who have been fully vaccinated, while keeping restrictions in place for those who have not. Most recently, Grenada announced that it would be reducing the quarantine requirement for fully vaccinated people entering that country. While the quarantine requirements for that group of people have been reduced to up to 48 hours, travelers will still be required to provide a negative PCR test valid up to 72 hours prior to the start of travel. In early April, Barbados announced that the quarantine requirements for vaccinated travelers would be reduced to 0 to 2 days from May 8th, during which they can move around their hotels. Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley said then that the country could no longer afford to keep the tourism sector partially closed, as it accounted for 45% of all economic activity. Social commentator Richard Pitakin said that it would be wise for St. Lucia to fall in line.
And I would say that if you're coming from a country that has a good vaccination strategy, and you've been vaccinated for, with the right vaccines in the last 2 weeks, you've done your PCR test and you've tested negative, then basically once you're here, we'll take another 48 hours to look at you, maybe test you again with a rapid antigen or whatever, and then we'll say, okay, that's fine. We'll monitor it, and slowly but surely the country starts to open up internally, externally, and business starts to come back. It's the only way. We can't carry on this way for the rest of our lives. And vaccinations are making a difference in countries.
Individuals are considered fully vaccinated 2 weeks after the second dose of a 2-dose vaccine, such as AstraZeneca, Pfizer, or Moderna, or 2 weeks after a single dose in the case of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Pitakin said that this new revelation could be exactly what regional economies need to bounce back.
Look at Israel now. Israel are starting to see that they have, I think they call it a green passport, but this is it, the whole idea of vaccination passports, which some countries are even saying that in order to do certain things that involve being together with a lot of people, you must be able to show that certificate. Some countries are even talking about allowing the employers to require that all employees, as part of their employment contract, have to be vaccinated, because there's a risk, in terms of what they're doing. And I've heard that, so I think in Grenada they were saying that yes, they will do so for hotel employees, so that the hotels can say, if you're a hotel employee and you want to come and work in the hotel, then you need to be vaccinated. In St. Lucia, the labor code does not allow that. Our labor code says no, you can't force somebody to do something that they do not want to do. That's not part of their employment contract. Mm-hmm. And so what you can do is request or require that that person go to and get a test, right? But you have to pay for it as an employer.
In the Caribbean region, Barbados, Grenada, and Anguilla are taking this approach. For the Hot 7 News, Nisha Charles reporting.
Thank you, Nisha. You're watching the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. When we return, a great ally to the Caribbean is facing its own COVID-19 crisis, and the fire service on motor vehicular accidents over the weekend.